So it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Tim Archer. I'm the president and CEO of Lam Research. And for those that might not be so familiar with Lam, we are one of the world's largest providers of the tooling that you see that go into these large mega fabs. Specifically, we're the global leader for etching equipment and a leader also in the deposition space. And so in fact, if you had a chance to go on the tour today, you would have actually had the chance to see a couple of our tools sitting in that clean room. For us, smart manufacturing is a very important topic, given that our customers, Micron, and others, are always looking for us to find better ways to make these very large investments more efficient, more productive. And so I look forward to the discussion today.
Terrific. Kiang.
Hi, my name is Kiang. I'm the Assisting Managing Director here in Singapore Economic Development Board. One of the roles I have in EDB is actually to look at advanced manufacturing strategies in Singapore. Maybe a little bit about manufacturing. Well, manufacturing has been, is, and will continue to be an important part of Singapore's economic strategy. Today, manufacturing is at about 20% of our GDP, and the intention for Singapore government is to continue to keep it at that level. And actually, smart manufacturing or advanced manufacturing is actually, to us, a good opportunity and a good trend for us to leverage on because it would allow the Singapore manufacturing sector to continue to be competitive while living within the resource envelope that we have in terms of constraints of land and labor. So certainly looking forward to this exchange with everyone later on.
Thank you. And Adeline.
Hi, I'm Adeline. I'm the Director for Smart Manufacturing and AI in Singapore. My team actually work a lot with data. We are drawing insight out from them and turning them into manufacturing capabilities.
Right. So obviously the theme of our discussion today is about smart manufacturing, but I thought we could sort of set the stage by actually defining what we're talking about, because it's sometimes when we hear these buzzwords in the media, right, we really want to understand what it is that we're talking about, because it's actually quite a complex thing across all of the different types of implementation. So maybe Koen, if you can get us started, and we'll kind of hear from everyone on this.
Yeah, sure. So when I think about smart manufacturing, it's actually a combination of multiple technologies. And if you put it broadly, it starts with all connectivity, all storage and compute. So all the capabilities that we have around sensoring, IoT, 5G. There's a broad set of technologies there that enable us to capture much more of the data and make them available for analysis. And then the second part is really what you do with that, right? You have all the data available, then you apply advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, your algorithms to get the insights out of that. And then the third sense is when I have the insights, I still want to drive the changes on the shop floor, changes in my business processes. So you've got all the technologies around process automation, physical automation in the line, but also technologies which will help our team members, like things like virtual reality, augmented reality. So a very broad set of technologies that come together that really drive that next set of improvements. And I think it's important to also note that it is not a manufacturing-only topic. You can apply this in your entire company. And I think that's an important notice, because everybody thinks about manufacturing, but there's definitely in business functions like procurement, supply chain, etc. There's many, many use cases there as well.
Yeah. Tim, what about for you?
Yeah, I think, of course, we build upon what you just heard, but from a tool maker perspective, we think really very specifically about what we refer to as equipment intelligence and how it contributes to smart manufacturing. When we define equipment intelligence, we're really thinking of three things. First, we think about evolving to a world where tools are self-aware. The second is where tools become self-maintaining. And in the third case, where tools are adaptive. And in those cases, self-aware means that you use much of this data that you just heard us talk about collecting through sensoring, but the tool knows its own condition. It knows what parts are in it. It knows how its performance compares against, say, other tools that are in these manufacturing fabs. Within these manufacturing fabs that you just saw today, you can have dozens of tools doing the same process. And so self-aware means it knows how it matches up against those other tools performance-wise. That has significant benefits as you try to run and operate these fabs. From a self-maintaining perspective, it means that tools can use this data that we've collected now to determine when certain parts in the tool need to be replaced. And it says that we've designed these tools now to have robotics to actually do the periodic replacement of those parts without human intervention, thereby saving labor and effort in maintaining the tools. And adaptive is, as the technology continues to evolve to ever smaller chips, ever smaller devices, the precision that's needed to manufacture those devices is increasing. And so adaptive says that you can actually make real-time measurements as the processes are proceeding and make changes so that you can drive out variability that would naturally exist due to small perturbations in either the tool design or manufacturing or in the incoming wafers themselves. And if we can accomplish those three things, then we think we've achieved a level of equipment intelligence that really enables smart manufacturing.
And so Adeline, here specifically, in a company like Micron, when you think about applying all these technologies, ultimately, what's the business goal that you're trying to achieve?
Well, I think for us, it's really about manufacturing consistency. So like what Tim mentioned about this self-aware tool, actually we collect large amount of data out from the tool itself. We're actually able to do two-to-two matching based on the data set, not just within a factory, but in all our global footprint in all the different fabs. And particularly, additionally to what we get from the supplier, we also put in our own sensor. I think you all have experienced it through the experience zones, where we look at acoustic sensor. They act like the ears to the machine, where we actually tap for abnormal sound. So example, like when robot is stretching wafer, you can actually hear it and you can actually see it in the amplitude of the sound wave. That's where we do the detection of anomaly in the tool. Apart from that, we also put in cameras, so that acts like the eyes of the human, where we are able to take the condition within the chambers, even on our products, allow us to catch problem right at the steps.
Right. And so this is obviously ultimately has an outcome in terms of the quality of the products, the reliability of the products that we can provide to customers, right? And I want to circle back to something that you said, Koen, about the notion of this is something that we're seeing obviously in smart manufacturing is sort of the tip of the spear, right, for these technologies. I'm sure, Kiang, you're probably seeing this digital transformation in a lot of different industries as well.
No, absolutely. I think it is pervasive, but at the same time, it is really about every different industries, different companies is at different stages of evolution, leveraging technology for different outcomes. Because at the end of the day, for companies, it is about what are the outcomes you want to achieve out from smart manufacturing. Is it about competitiveness, growing top line, or is it about reducing costs? What are your KPIs that you are most important or that's most relevant to you? Is it quality? Is it flexibility? Is it efficiency? And I think to be able to focus on one or two of these elements and then drive outcomes on a step-by-step basis is probably the way to go, because it is a journey. It's not a stepped increase in investment and expect outcomes. It's a journey of continuous improvement. And I think that is really enabled by technology that we're seeing today in the field. And across different industries, we're seeing it, as in the semicon industry, obviously, it's been well talked about. We see it in other industries as well. For example, in the chemicals industry, it is really about adopting some of these technologies, perhaps, for safety and also for energy efficiency. In the aerospace industry, for example, it's about leveraging smartness to look at aftermarket services. How can you actually make it even more effective, from repairs to preventive maintenance over a period of time? So it manifests itself in different ways across different industries, but all without one outcome, which is to drive value for the companies and the industries.
And so clearly there's a lot of technology building blocks, right, that are involved here, but is it just about throwing technology at the problem? Or, how do you actually make this successful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my view, there's different levers to look at, like what are the key drivers on making this successful. Technology definitely being one, right? Like you need to have the right data infrastructure in place to be able to capture all that data and leverage that data. But like Koen was saying, there's other aspects to it. The financials and driving the right use cases is also something very important. That it is not a technology-driven approach, but very much of where do I want to find the value and then deploying the right technologies for it. Mm-hmm. And I think, I'd say that the third element to it is when we have the right use cases, when we have the right technology, then we also need the right people for it, because you need a different set of skills than the typical traditional engineering skills. So you need to enhance that with data science skills, for example. And the combination of all of that together is what drives next level of impact.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because there's obviously a major change that has to happen in terms of, just even access to those to that talent that has those right skill sets is something that, the industry really needs to look ahead to now, right? And so let's talk a little bit about the importance of that, because I know, Kiang, Tim, we've all been talking about kind of this aspect of, the transformation that also has to happen in terms of people, the culture that you're driving, and to really be able to be successful there. So I know that you're working on a lot of upskilling techniques as well, kind of new training techniques. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. No, I think that I couldn't agree more with respect to this point of there's lots of great ideas about technology, but really it's do you have the right people to implement these ideas in an effective way? And we have a very broad set of engineering skills that are used to manufacture and design our tools and processes. But one of the skills that's in relatively short supply globally today is data scientists. People who really know how to assemble these data sets and make sense of them in a way that we can use. And that's an area that I know that in talking with Koen is that Singapore wants to focus in that area. And in fact, we're partnering with EDB to try to make, for Lam Research, Singapore a center of excellence for data science. And we've just initially kicked this off. And I think there are examples of other regions that have also done this, and one being India, where many years ago, India began to develop a real capability for software engineering. And today, look at a company like Lam Research, we employ hundreds of software engineers in India as a result of the competency that they bring in that area. We think this could be a great opportunity for Singapore to invest in, data science right at the beginning of this real wave of transformation in manufacturing.
Right.
Maybe just building on a little bit of what Tim said. On one hand, I think from Singapore's perspective, at least, we are trying to grow the necessary talent that may be lacking in the industry to take the whole smart manufacturing journey forward. But on the other hand, I think it's also important to recognize that the skill sets of existing workforce would need to be upgraded, upskilled, in order for us to support such operations. So that is an area also where the Singapore government is actually putting quite a bit of emphasis in, because ultimately it's about process, technology, and people that will bring about the outcome. And therefore the people element, how do we ensure that our existing workforce is trained in time for technology adoption, or even in anticipation of some adoption in future, so that collectively they can optimize and bring about the necessary value, not just for the companies, but for the workforce as well. So I think that's an area where we are, you may have heard about the Skills Future series. We have one for advanced manufacturing where we are actually helping, putting in place modularized courses to help our workforce learn about building digital confidence in trying to be able to understand and leverage some of these digital technologies in the day-to-day operations. So some of these things were done in collaboration with companies as well, so that collectively we can help the workforce upgrade.
Adeline, how have you seen some of those changes actually in Micron's workforce?
Right. Within Micron, we actually engaged our technician early because we saw that there's a job transformation going on with Industrial 4.0. And what we have done was really, engage them early, understand where their pain point and how we can help them make their job more efficient. For example, we talk about a lot of automation of the knowledge work. Now they don't have to really physically go to the tool and, apply all the knowledge or the experience that they have to solve the problem. They are all now be able to do it in the office, on their iPads, on their computers. They just see the data right there. They can apply, look at what they know, and then even remotely controlling the tool right at the desk. And it actually gave them much more flexibility in terms of how they spend their time in more innovative projects. With the Industrial 4.0 coming in, we're actually putting them to go and understand the tool more, like what other additional sensor that we should be putting on the tools, so that it can not let their knowledge go to waste.
Right. So you're building on all of their capabilities, but then actually letting the employees really have higher value work and letting the machines, handle the things that machines are good at, essentially.
Yeah. So we are actually removing all the laborious tasks that they used to do, that's taking a lot of their time, and now they can really put in the intelligence to work with this upskilling.
Maybe just building on, it's about, the domain knowledge is still very, very important.
Right.
But it's about applying it to problem solving, applying it with creating new solutions and preventing problems from arising, as opposed to doing the day-to-day work of having, to deal with the machine when trouble happens. So I think that is really where you need to really put, a certain different type of lens on top of the expertise that you need to have in order to achieve that.
Yeah. And I think they were pretty excited. In their personal life, handphones is so common, right? Everybody use their phone, and now we just apply it in the workforce where, in the office, they can also do it just right on their phones.
That's pretty exciting, right? You get to see the transformation in terms of how the experience actually changes for the workforce as well, right? Let's talk a little bit more about some of the success stories that we're already seeing here, because again, I mean, when we've seen it, we really are seeing that it is something that's coming to life. Certainly, I know that there's a really strong collaboration between Lam and Micron already here. So maybe let's start there, and then we can come up with some of the examples of really kind of concrete examples of how we've already seen successes here in the supply chain.
I guess one of the things that we do have collaboration with Lam on some of the data science projects, where we collectively work on a common problem, like the example that I've just mentioned on tool and chamber matching. How can we draw more insight out from the tool data? We have our domain knowledge in our process. They come in with the equipment expert knowledge. How do we combine these two, marry these two, and give us a better outcome on how do we make the tool more efficient, produce better quality products out of this.
Yeah, this is a project that really requires partnership between the manufacturer and the equipment companies, because as Koen said, there's domain knowledge that each of us possesses. It's quite important to solving this problem. And so I think our partnership in specifically the idea around how to ensure that small variations between different chambers are not causing yield loss, which of course is detrimental to the business, that those things can be resolved very quickly in the early stages of the fab ramp, and that you can more quickly achieve mature yields, and you're making money from these kinds of investments. So that's, I think, been a great partnership between our companies. I'll give you one other example, because we just talked about kind of job transformation. And we haven't yet implemented this here, but we have experience elsewhere in the world on the self-maintaining tool front. And we recently have spoken publicly about a capability where we implemented robotics in the system, and again, using the data to know when the parts needed to be replaced. And now we have an entire fleet of tools installed in a fab much like this one, where all of that routine maintenance is being done by robotics. And so those parts that need to be replaced every 1 to 2 weeks, and it used to be people that had to do that very kind of mundane and routine job. Now it's being done by the robotics. That customer has now saved over a period of years 45,000 labor hours simply because of that implementation of smart manufacturing. And I think, again, it frees up resources that we can now upskill, and they can be applied to much more important tasks in trying to drive us forward.
And I mean, we talk a lot about the sensors that are required for this kind of automation to actually happen in these sort of self-healing tools and self-aware tools. Help us get a sense of the scale of the data problem that this actually represents, right? Because as you start to add many more sensors to these thousands of points that are out there, what are we really dealing with when you're at a site like this one?
Yeah, just to give you some examples on numbers around data, we probably have about 10 terabytes of data that we get on a daily basis out of tools.
10 terabytes per day.
Yeah, and if you look to our storage overall, we're talking petabytes of data. Now we don't store all the data, right? Like we store only the data that we think is useful for us and that we want to draw insights of. Because it's not an exercise by itself to store the data. We want to get the value out of it, but the amount is huge. And if you look to it over time, that will only grow. So you need the right talent to actually be able to handle that. So it's quite impressive to see this grow over time. And I would say one additional point to that is you can't do this by yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You do have some of the capabilities that you need to build in-house. Some of it you work with your key equipment suppliers. You need to work with technology providers, and a mix of very established players, but also some of the startups. Building that ecosystem is really important there, because you need these different technologies to come together. And I think we have a lot of that here in Singapore, and it's very important to build that so that it becomes scalable across the entire company.
I mean, and coming back to this notion of automation, right? And so we have certainly new opportunities that are being opened up for people who are working in the field of data science, and so many of these new opportunities. But what do you say to folks who may be concerned about automation and AI, where they're concerned they think it may have an impact on kind of the number of jobs that are available in this industry? And I think that's a legitimate concern for people, but from the conversations that we've had, you all seem very positive on this, and so I'd like to hear your thoughts on kind of where do you see the difference? Tim, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think, my view on this is that, really what we are trying to drive here in terms of business result is really growth. Growth for manufacturers like Micron, growth for equipment makers like Lam Research. And so, growth in our industry is actually accomplished by continuously driving more efficient and more effective manufacturing. It's been the history of our industry for more than 50 years, and I think it will continue to be in the future. And so the reason I'm positive is if we are successful in upskilling the workforce and implementing equipment intelligence and smart manufacturing, the industry will grow. The demand for NAND, in fact, there's a virtuous cycle. You just heard Koen talk about we are not only generating data that needs to be stored and analyzed, we're actually also building the solutions that help store and analyze that data. And so I think you're going to see that pervasiveness throughout all industries. And for me, it just is this is a growth business and a job creator.
I love that. It's a job creator.
It's a job creator.
And the types of jobs are really transforming. Right?
Yes, definitely so as well. I think at the end of the day, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, ultimately technology is to drive outcomes. And if there's growth overall, then there's new opportunities for the workforce as well. It will require some level of reskilling. You'll require maybe new type of capabilities. It's all about bringing the workforce along with you on the journey and to be able to train and retrain, learn, unlearn, relearn. And I think that's going to be the kind of language in this time of technology evolution that brings about opportunities. Maybe at this juncture also, allow me to kind of like introduce a new tool that we've created. I think in Singapore, we see a lot out there that while we have companies at the forefront of adoption, such as Micron and Lam, that are paving the way, there are actually also many companies out there that while they understand the concept of Industry 4.0, but what it means to them is an area where they are struggling with a little bit. So back in 2017, actually, for us, we've actually created the Smart Industry Readiness Index. And it's basically an evaluation tool that helps companies evaluate where they are today in terms of the I4.0 transformation. It has 16 domains across 3 pillars of process, technology, and organization, which includes workforce. And the idea is that it creates a common language so that the companies who are less familiar can actually use the common language as a form of engagement and evaluate where they are in the journey and can better formulate which next steps they need to take. And the reason why it cuts across all 3 pillars, and I'm linking it back to the discussion about jobs and workforce, is because actually the workforce element is a big part of it. And so sometimes companies may tend to be carried away with technology, but at the end of the day, the index hopefully gives it a more broader base for them to evaluate not just technology, but process and people as well, so that they can take the right next steps on the transformation journey.
So you're really giving them a roadmap to be able to take these sort of innovative approaches and go from pilot to production, right?
Absolutely.
Across all of those pillars.
Yeah, and even to prioritize which are the areas that you need to focus on first. Because for some, it may be a process improvement before technology. For others, it may be technology, but hey, we need to look at workers' training and retraining in order to enable the technology to come to life. So again, it may differ from company to company, but the idea is it is a common language that hopefully helps the industry level up in terms of their understanding and then be able to take the steps forward, incremental steps forward, to bring these technologies to life.
And Koen, speaking of this notion of being able to go successfully, right, from pilots into production, what are some of the best practices that companies in general can look at when they want to embark on a project of digital transformation like this that you've sort of seen from your experience here and in other places?
I think the key to me is really to start from that value-driven portion. Define the use cases that are really having the biggest impact. Then align your technology behind that and align your people behind that as well. Right? Because if you're then successful in a pilot, that means that immediately you have the traction to scale this in your company. Right? Versus the opposite approach of it is I have a successful technology and then I need to find where I can go and apply it. So
the solution in search of a problem, right?
The speed at which you can implement it is much, much bigger. You get the traction in a large company like Micron when you know that there's big opportunity behind it. And for us, there's many ways of opportunity. There's the quality improvements. There's bringing more products faster to our customers. And our overall cost, which drives in itself more demand.
So really the key is to start with that business outcome first in terms of selecting the right use cases and then building everything from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. you seeing similar implementations as well?
Yeah, I think we are. I think one thing I would add is also invest in change management. You know, the one thing is we just talked a lot about, you know, this is new for people, and there could be some resistance, and we're really trying to drive significant change in the way that we've done things for many years. And so I think, you know, getting and investing in explaining why and why people shouldn't be afraid of these changes and why it really is for the good of the company and the business gets the employees and the workforce on board, and that really helps them get behind these changes.
I love it. You know, I think really as we look ahead, maybe let's just take a moment. I'm going to imagine a crystal ball in front of all of us here. And so I'm going to ask each of you to take a look into that crystal ball for us and tell us what are some of the trends and what do you see actually happening as we look forward into the future? Because we're already seeing so much of this implementation today, but as you look 5 to 10 years out, what are you most excited about? And what do you think are going to be these sort of transformational changes as you look in this area and how it's driving that transformation in the industry?
Yeah. For me, it's really about artificial intelligence and the scale at which we will apply it. I think if you look to it now, we use a core set of experts, data scientists, to build us the next wave of solutions that we apply. I think if you look 5 to 10 years out, AI is going to be a common tool set that each of us is going to use in our work. And I refer to it a little bit to Lean a couple of years ago. Lean used to be a couple of experts that drive that in a company, then eventually became a mindset and it became a toolkit for everybody to use. Similarly, I see AI playing that role that will really help each of us in our job and to kind of do more than we currently are able to do, get more insights than what we are currently able to do.
Tim, however you?
You know, I think that, you know, it's a little hard to characterize, but I guess I would say that there's one word that I think would describe kind of the next 5 to 10 years, and that's faster. You know, I think that we're looking at how Industry 4.0 technologies are going to allow us to design and build the next generation tools faster. We're working with companies like Micron to figure out how we use things like simulation to help them develop the next generation technologies faster. And then, of course, as we look at fabs like this, we've already talked about some of the smart manufacturing tools that will help us ramp them and to full production much faster. And so I think, you know, when I talked about change management, I think the key message here is people have to start getting ready for this idea that we're going to see an acceleration of change and overall improvement in this industry in the next 5 to 10 years.
And faster than we ever expected it to happen,
Faster than we ever
probably.
expected, and it's all driven by just what you heard, AI and the use of data.
Okay, what about for you?
No, I certainly agree with Tim and Koen here. I think ultimately we think in 5 to 10 years you're going to see a lot more pervasive adoption of digitalization, transformation across different manufacturing sectors. But at the same time, I would like to just point out that it's not just about manufacturing. If you think about the whole I 4.0 concept, you know, it could actually be extended, you know, over time to other industries as well. We talk about the construction industry and how increasingly the materials are prefabbed and then, you know, assembled on site. The whole prefab process is almost like a manufacturing process and can definitely benefit a lot from the Industry 4.0 tools that we're talking about. If you look at healthcare and hospitals, automation, digitalization of that can actually bring healthcare services to the next level. So there's actually a lot of other use case, even outside the manufacturing realm, that could benefit from technologies as such.
Yeah, absolutely. And then,
Yeah, for
Adeline?
me, it's more on the availability of remote control. I think people now can really do their job anywhere that they want with the use of mobility and all the connectivities. You know, they are no longer needed to be physically outside, and you know, a lot of decision will be driven more not by experience but by data.
Perfect. Well, I think that's all the time that we have. I know it's been a great session. Please join me in thanking all of our panelists for sharing their time with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.